Welcome to today's video, and it's the first monthly wrap up of the year. So I read 9 books this month, which just feels crazy to say. I think that's honestly the most books that I've read in any month, probably ever. I've just had a really good reading month and I found a lot of new books that I just absolutely love. So let's go through them. The first book that I read in January, the first book of 2024, was The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. So this is a murder mystery thriller and it's set in the Scottish wilderness, and it's about a group of friends who go to this hunting lodge for a New Year's gathering, and some unfortunate events take place and they're trying to work out who's done it, what's happened. I really like Lucy Foley's writing. All her books have a very similar structure that just makes it so fast-paced and so quick and easy to read. I did find this one a bit slower just to get into. I think it was when I was about halfway that it really picked up for me and I was really into it. But like I said, Lucy Foley's writing is so readable that the first half was enjoyable. It was just a bit slower for me and I didn't find that I was desperate to get back into it at the start. So I gave this 3 stars. It's such a solid thriller, but I think I just felt a bit disconnected from the whole thing, which is why it's 3 stars. But I did enjoy reading it and it was perfect for New Year's time, which is why I chose to read it then, because obviously it's set at New Year's. And then I read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes and I loved this book. This is a YA crime mystery and it follows a group of teenagers who basically help the FBI solve cold cases. All these teenagers have their own special kind of skill that they use to solve these cold cases, and I just love the whole concept of this. I love the way it's written and I cannot wait to get the rest of the series because I'm just so excited to read it. The pace of this book was done so well. It just kept you absolutely hooked through the whole thing and none of it felt rushed at all, and I feel like sometimes with books like this where there are scenes where it's all kind of kicking off, it can feel quite rushed, but this was just paced perfectly. I just loved the whole group of teenagers as well, and they just felt really real and like I could so imagine them and what they're like, and it's very Criminal Minds but young adult version, which I just absolutely love. I rated this 4 stars, but I think the series as a whole has the potential to be a 5-star series because I just feel like I'm gonna absolutely love this series. I also could be wrong, but I have a feeling that the other books are going to be more plot driven because obviously at the start of this we were setting everything up and we were being introduced to all these characters, whereas the other ones I feel like are going to be a bit more plot driven because we already know the characters. And I'm just so happy that I have a new series that I'm just so excited about reading. Next I read Never Lie by Freida McFadden. I read The Housemaid last year and it just made me want to read every single one of Freida McFadden's books. I'd heard so much hype about this book and let me tell you, it did not disappoint. So this is about a couple who go to a house viewing and there's a big snowstorm, so they end up actually stuck in this house, and the house actually belongs to a psychiatrist who went missing. Trisha, who's the main girl in this, finds all the psychiatrist's tape recordings of her sessions with her patients and she starts to uncover what happened with the disappearance. And honestly, this is a book that I just couldn't put down. It's definitely more on the creepier side of a thriller. I was literally on edge. It's definitely got that sort of eerie feeling to it. So I gave this 4 stars. I absolutely loved it. It's such a good thriller. And again, this just makes me want to read more Freida McFadden books. I literally want to read all of her books. It also made it really quick to read because some of the chapters were transcripts of the tape recordings. I kept going back and forth between the transcripts and what was happening with the couple in this house, and I really liked that it was done like that because it just broke it up a bit and made it so much more readable and you just wanted to keep reading to get to the next transcript and find out more information. I just really enjoyed it and I definitely think it's worth all the hype that it got. Next we have If We Ever Meet Again by Anna Huang, and I was so excited to read this book but it just fell flat for me. Within the first 50 pages I was kind of thinking of DNFing it, and I actually asked you guys if you'd read it and whether it was worth carrying on, and a lot of you guys did say that it gets better. So I did read the rest, but I just don't think this book is for me. I found it very cringy and I found the guy very full of himself in a really over the top cringy sort of way that just made me not like him, and I find it really hard when you don't like one of the 2 characters to then root for them to be together. I also was really confused at the plot of this at some points because I felt like it was very rushed. Like one minute we were in Disneyland, then the next chapter we were in Thailand, and it all just felt like the pace was just a bit off. And then on top of that, with how the plot went and where it took us, was just quite frustrating, and some things happened that I think are just kind of unforgivable. And I know that this book is part of a series, but I just think if I was to read the second one, I just wouldn't be able to look past what happened in this one, if that makes sense. I just think it really wasn't for me. So I gave it 2 stars. I do really like the way that this is written, and I like the writing style. I just think the characters and the plot just weren't for me. So the next one is You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. I actually listened to this on audiobook on Spotify, and I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of gutted about this book because I love Emily Henry, I love her writing. I just didn't love this book. I just really didn't like the main 2 characters. They both just kind of annoyed me in their own way, and that's just something I couldn't look past. This follows 2 friends who go on holiday every year together, but in the present day they're not as close anymore. So we kind of go back through all these holidays, and eventually we learn why they're not as close anymore. So this whole book kind of builds up to this big argument and why they're not friends anymore. But I just thought that the actual argument was very underwhelming, and it just kind of didn't make sense to have that much of an impact on their lives. The argument just seemed kind of minor, and I was really looking forward to finding out why they fell out, but that bit just kind of fell flat for me. And I think that, on top of the fact that I wasn't really connected with either of the characters or them being together, I just think this book wasn't for me. So I gave it 1 star, which feels really harsh, and I feel really mean doing that because I do really like her writing. So this one was a bit of a surprise for me, but that's okay. So then I was actually filming a read thrillers for a week with me. So the next 3 books are all thrillers. So first I read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a dark academia psychological thriller, and it follows 6 friends who all met in college, and one of them got murdered, and then they all sort of went their separate ways after this happened. And 10 years later they're all brought back together for a reunion, and the victim's brother is also there, and he's determined to find out what happened and who did it. The thing that's so interesting about this book is that all the characters are so unlikable, but that's what makes it good. Like, all the characters are so flawed, they're slightly unhinged, and it's just so chaotic, but in a good way. I really like the vibe of this book because you really got that prestigious college, rich people vibe. And it's such an interesting read psychologically because you really get to see how all the characters feel about themselves compared to how they're acting and interacting with each other. And it's interesting that it didn't really matter how well off they were because they all kind of felt the same inside and felt like they didn't really fit in for whatever reason. And to know how they sort of feel inside and then see what kind of mask they wear with everybody else was just so interesting to read. All the characters just felt very thought out, and the ending, I was so not ready for the ending, and you can literally see my reaction in that vlog. My jaw was on the floor. It was on the floor. So I gave this 5 stars. It's just such a good thriller, and it's one that I've definitely thought about since I finished reading it. The next one I read was The Hike by Lucy Clarke. Now, I love Lucy Clarke's writing. I read The Castaways last year and absolutely loved it. So I was really excited to read this. So this follows 4 friends who go on holiday together every year, and this time they went to Norway and decided to hike up this big mountain. And it just ends up being so chaotic. This is definitely more on the mystery thriller side. What I really loved about this is the atmosphere of the mountain, and you really felt like you were there with them climbing the mountain. I also liked that they all had their own backstory and their own secrets that were slowly revealed. I will say that there wasn't like a massive twist. This felt very much like there were loads of small twists and turns that we took along the way, but there wasn't like a massive jaw-dropping moment. But I did really enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars. Next we have Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell. Now, we all know by now how much I love Lisa Jewell's writing. They're one of the most fast-paced, easy books to read, and I always just know that I'm going to read her books super quickly. I will say that I think this one was slightly different to Lisa Jewell's other books that I've read, just because her other ones seemed very much like normal people going about their normal lives and then some big event happens. But there was something about the characters in this one where they all felt slightly unsettling, and it felt as if there was already a lot of stuff going on and we were just kind of thrown in the middle of it, which is great because you really felt like you were in it straight away. I find this one also really hard to explain the plot of because it's about a girl that goes missing, and we follow her, but we also follow her therapist and his family. But then opposite this family lives this guy, and that guy is accused of her disappearance. So it's all very like linked together, but it's a really hard plot to kind of explain. I also think this was definitely more mystery, and the answers and kind of twists were revealed very slowly. It was kind of a slow burn story where information was just gradually revealed. I rated this 3 stars. It's a very solid mystery thriller. And then the last book of the month feels like a very special one. And if you've been following my TikTok, you know that I've been raving about this recently. And it's honestly all I can think about right now, and that is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So I wanted to get more into fantasy this year, and I chose Powerless as my first fantasy, and I actually did a full vlog reading it and all my thoughts throughout it, and I am honestly shocked at how much of an impact this book has had on me. It's a YA fantasy, but it's very heavy on the romance, and I'm obsessed with Payden and Kai. I absolutely love them. I love them individually, I love them together. I'm just obsessed. The fantasy side of this was so easy to understand, and there wasn't a ton of world building, which just made it so easy to read, and I honestly think this was the perfect book to kind of introduce me into the fantasy world. I honestly cannot stop thinking about this. I literally had to take a day off reading when I finished this, which is so unlike me because I usually just go straight to the next book, but I honestly had to take a day to recover, to kind of collect my thoughts, collect myself. That's how much of an impact this book had on me. I've honestly not stopped thinking about it since. The end of this book, I can't even explain. I literally can't even explain the feeling that I felt when I finished this. And I honestly cannot wait for book 2 and the novella that's coming out. I'm so not ready for it, but also I need it right this minute. So I actually rated this 6 stars. This is my first 6-star of 2024, which is just so crazy. I'm so excited about it. I just adore these characters. I love the enemies to lovers vibe. I love their banter. Their banter was just done so well. And the tension throughout the whole book. Don't even talk to me about it. It was just incredible. And it's literally all I can think about. So there are all the books that I read in January. I literally can't believe how big this pile is. I'd love to hear what your guys' favourite book was this month. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.